Welcome to the 14th episode of the Student Recap Podcast, Club Connections. Today I'll just be soloing it. Sorry the scheduling didn't work out to get anybody else on the show, but let's get into it. So to start off with, I'll just talk about what I did in Model UN Club. So for the past few meetings, we've just been discussing topics that could come up in a conference. And that was something there's another global pandemic, how do you solve it? Or some nation attacks another one, how do you solve it? Because obviously these are issues that are going to be covered in Model UN conferences. And then I had a conference on November the 9th, so that was about 2 weeks ago. And I was representing Russia as General Assembly plenary, and that was actually pretty fun, except for the fact that my school, we basically got the entire delegation of Russia. We got Interpol, WHO, the legal, I forget what the abbreviation for it is, GA, and then UNHCR. It was pretty hard to defend it, but we did well, but more specifically on me. So our topics were the protection of journalists because they report controversial topics, the safety of refugees having work in their host countries, and also the effects of cybersecurity on world crime. So for me, I chose to write my position paper about the protection of journalists and subsidizing lawful news, but obviously as Russia, I wanted to make a bias scale that the government could bend so that the populace would still be under my subdued control. And there's a 3-tier system of punishments that make it harder for journalists to keep reporting after they have multiple infractions. And after these infractions are maxed out, you could possibly be sent to jail or your journalism license being gone. So to start off with how my block formed, I had North Korea as my partner right next to me, and also Iran nearby. So I first got North Korea, we were passing notes, and then we got some more autocratic countries in the beginning. We had Spain, Argentina, Vietnam, the Seychelles, and I believe it was Uzbekistan. We got those guys, and that was about 7 people. But then we got into a road bump. So there were a few more countries that were interested in our ideas, but they couldn't come in because they were we don't like the autocratic part. So we had to add a few clauses about protecting journalists later on, and we'd have that resolution later. But in this moment, our block was a little bit shaky. So I had to soften the message during the moderated caucuses, and some other speakers were able to do that for me. Spain and India, they were back and forth, but they definitely put forward my point to the rest of the delegates. And North Korea and I, we just really pushed forward the main idea of our point. We were very strong in that. So we had the first delegation for the morning was about the protection of journalists, right? So we had 2 hours, and it was actually pretty fun, surprisingly, even though we had time constraints. And we were able to get to the writing resolutions. But at that point, it started to get hard because each block, so we had our block, Russia and North Korea, they were countering the Ukraine-USA alliance that had about actually protecting journalists. So it was dead split. If there was a vote, neither group would win because there's people that would flip to either side. And we had to get some more people. So Mali from the other side, they were on the US's side in Ukraine. They started talking with us diplomat style, which was really interesting. And then we were able to make a resolution that we would modify each of our resolution papers to have clauses that not contradict each other, because before each of the resolution papers would contradict each other, but now they didn't contradict each other. And if all the delegates were willing to, we had the choice to vote for both. Though I think this worked out, there's a later instance that I did not like both resolutions getting passed. So we passed with like the entire GA plenary voting for us. It was with like 25 out of 26 people. And yeah, I just want to like talk about some specific countries that helped me out. So Mali, I obviously said that they were very diplomatic. The Seychelles, Vietnam, and Uzbekistan, they were like definitely my wing boys. Like they just helped me out regardless of their actual country's position. North Korea, obviously we have to be partners. Russia and North Korea are very easy. And I'll talk about more about like having the partners later on. India and Spain, they were back and forth, but they were really good speakers. They had good tone. The Ukraine and the UAE, so basically I was the high delegate in the Russia bloc, and I had to talk with the Ukraine delegate because she was the highest delegate in her bloc. So we had that high-ranking bilateral discussion, and then we talked about voting for both and having the clauses. And then the UAE, just because they were from my school and they were very helpful. And Japan, in the end, they flipped to me after much discussion with them, and I was pretty happy about that. In the second debate, we had the discussion about refugees and having work in their new host countries, which is like important because if they can't have work, then their livelihoods are greatly restricted. So in that, I unfortunately lost. I could not do anything for the discussion. One, because Russia doesn't have that many refugees. Two, because I don't know that much about the topic in context of Russia. And three, the other countries just had a way better idea. So we started off with just one big blob, essentially, that wanted to protect refugees and their status. And then the moderated caucuses, they made us like sort of diverge our ideas, and then eventually the GA plenary chairs told us we have to make 2 or more blocks. It's too hard to have just one big blob because that's not how it would really go, because obviously countries are very contradicting ideology-wise. So Portugal, Ukraine, and the USA, I believe, they were the strongest players in this delegation. This was in the afternoon. And they had really good position papers about this, so I think that was their main topic, not the protection of journalists. But I think Portugal doesn't have that many refugees, nor does Ukraine, or North Korea was also on their side. Sorry for not mentioning that earlier. The U.S., I would definitely agree that they have a major standpoint, but I feel like in the end, we passed both resolutions. I'll just explain them to you. One was like setting up refugee centers regionally so that migrants don't have to go thousands and thousands of miles across the world. Instead, they can go to a local area, and then they can get job training in that UN center. And that job training boosts the local economy since they're still within the reach of their past country of inhabitants. And the other resolution was about passing education reforms so that all refugees, if they have an education or they want to get an education, their degree is valid universally, because obviously refugees traveling to other countries and then not being able to do work, it's just very hard for them because they work so hard for their previous degree. So, yeah, I think that was pretty much the end of the Model UN part, but I really enjoyed it. And then North Korea, her name was Lucia. She had a sister in the same delegation, which was really weird, and it was Ukraine. and Ukraine was always hunting me down. And then she would flip flop because obviously she's gonna bond with her sister and tries to be on her side. But no, sometimes she had to be on my side because she was North Korea and I was Russia. I think I actually bonded really well, and I'll make some more friends like Lucia, and then also the Seychelles, Vietnam, and Uzbekistan. I couldn't get their names, but I have a feeling I'll be friends with them at the next delegation. Now, moving on, I just wanted to talk about my other clubs. So I recently had a bunch of French club meetings, and that's involved with Texas French Symposium. So currently I'm signed up for 5 events. Well, technically 3, but I'll explain. So I've musical solo. I play tenor sax, as you've heard in the first episode. I can have a link to that in the description if you want. Extemporaneous speaking, sight reading. There's a test on interpretive reading and a test on interpretive listening. Basically just similar to what a final would be, but the higher you score, the more points you get for your school. And I chose musical solo obviously because I'm in band. Extemporaneous speaking and sight reading, those are just they're more likable categories for me because I do not like to memorize poems or other like prose items as such. And other than that, French Club has had a lot of interesting meetings about like cultural events. Like they had a crepe baking thing a few weeks ago, and that was pretty fun. And there's always croissant or pain au chocolat at the meetings, which is nice. And the funny thing, think I'm one of 3 boys in the French Club. I just don't think that there's very many people in the French class to start with, and then it's harder to get the boys to join anyways. And then also we have a Spanish club, so it was pretty small in the beginning of the year. There's fluctuating amounts of members, but I actually got onto the board of it. I'm the communications director, and that's actually a really fun position for me to have because obviously, like, first year of high school, like, it's very hard to get positions, but there was just this open spot, and it'll look really good on my college resume. And then the most recent meeting we had was this Wednesday, I think. It was about the Mexican Revolution. We talked about, like, the important people in it, such as Pancho Villa, and how it, like, really shaped Mexico to be what it is today, because that revolution in 1910, it changed the government from being a little bit more like royalist and autocratic to actually a presidency, and that's what we have now. Actually connected to that is how France has gone through 5 republics past the like royal family. So there was the Jacobin, then the Napoleonic. Then there was some weird thing after the Napoleonic years. Then another weird thing during the German invasion of France in World War II with the Vichy. And then you have the Cinquième République with all the modern French presidents, which surprisingly have been way better than our American presidents. I don't think there's ever been a French president that has actually done much harm to his country. And then so back to Spanish Club. So it's pretty fun because like almost everybody in there is fluent in Spanish and we can talk in Spanish, even though the club's like not supposed to be exclusionary. But alas, it's just a fun thing to bond with like the Latino culture. And yeah, I really find that interesting. Oh, and one more thing I forgot. So there's another Model UN conference that I'm going to in February, and I got assigned Turkey for UN environmental protection, which is going to be pretty hard to pull off. But what I'm planning is to have the Turkish Riviera and other like natural formations in Turkey become tourist destinations. And then I can generate revenue, and that could be applied to all countries, and therefore the global economy grows because tourism from all over the world to places that would have never been visited before increases the economy, and then nature's protected in the meanwhile. I think I just have to be really strong in my tone of voice because this conference, it's a lot more delegates than the one I went to a few weeks ago. And to get an award, it's going to be way harder. And I actually got an award at the last conference. I think it was honorable mention, but I mean, still, that was pretty good for my first conference. And then, so my other colleagues, we also got assigned Turkey for the majority of the categories as well, which was funny because they keep giving our school like the weirdest countries that are hard to defend. And I actually talked to North Korea, whose name is Lucia, at the end of the last conference, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I have Afghanistan for I believe it was Interpol, but I'll tell you guys after the conference." So yeah, I think you should expect another Club Connections episode sometime in February, I believe, because obviously week to week there's not much content from my clubs, but a good month, 2 month stretch can get you that content to make this episode as long as it is. So thank you for watching the 14th episode of Student Recap Podcast, Club Connections, and I hope you enjoyed.